Hiya, I have been looking at a series of thriller films and selecting clips to analyse. Each clip is from a different era to create my own thriller timeline as well as further research into my chosen genre, which is thriller. I have selected films from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 2000, 2010 and to the present day. The first one I shall discuss will be one of Alfred Hitchcock's most famous films called Psycho, which was produced in 1960s. Psycho is a 1960 American psychological horror thriller directed and produced by Alfred Hitchcock and was based on a novel of the same name. In Psycho's iconic shower scene, there is a very good use of cross-dissolve graphic match from the plug hole to her eye. This is very good use of a graphic match because it shows her still lifeless body and leaves you wondering what actually happened to her. Before this was shot, we see her in the shower with a dark shadow appearing closer and closer to the shower curtain. The music sets in and leaves the viewer feeling in suspense and on edge because they don't know what's going to happen next. I really like the use of the music to make it seem tenser, and I hope to achieve this in my own thriller trailer with good use of music so that it will add atmosphere to my scenes. Okay, so the next clip I'll talk about is from 1970s and it's called The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola. The Conversation is a 1974 American psychological thriller film and was written and produced by Coppola himself. When you first see the main character in this clip, you really wouldn't think much of him. He looks like a normal man who's dressed for work or business, quite formal clothing. He then asks the hotel receptionist for a certain room, and at that point you start to, as a viewer, realise that something isn't quite right. He seems concerned that he can't get a certain room in the hotel. And I really like the way they've done this because it makes you question how you feel about the person and what he's going to do next. Also, the fact that a lot of this certain scene is silent, it also creates for a tense viewing and leaves you wondering what's going to happen next. Okay, the next clip I will talk about is from the 1980s and it's The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. The Shining is a 1980s British psychological horror film produced by Kubrick himself. I like how he is able to create tension in this certain clip. The lack of sound makes the scene feel more eerie, and the use of a younger child as the main character makes it tenser because you would normally stereotypically think of a child to be quite innocent. The way you can only hear his trike wheels on different floors and then it suddenly silences in this clip when it goes over the carpet makes you as a viewer feel more on edge because you're not sure what's going to happen next, and then he stops outside the hotel room, which automatically makes you question what's in the room, and then suddenly the two children appear quickly again, making you question what's going to happen next as he cycles away. I just really like the way how, again, like earlier I mentioned, that in a film when it's quite silent and there's only like natural sound, it can make for a more tense viewing, which as a viewer I personally think makes for a better thriller film. Okay, so the next clip I analysed was from the 1990s and was called Misery by Rob Reiner. Misery is a 1990 American psychological thriller film based on Stephen King's 1987 novel of the same name. It starts by showing the location they're in, which immediately makes you realise they're quite isolated, and if something were to happen, then they wouldn't be able to get much help because of the area that they're in. Next, you see him in a wheelchair being cared for by the main character, Annie, who seems to be quite patronising and demanding. She then goes on to buy him a typewriter in this clip, and the quiet background music piece starts to fade in just as she brings him this typewriter. It fades in, then the angle gets lower, and the camera makes her seem like she is very much in power because it's tilted up, so it's to show that she is superior to him. And I like how by changing the camera angle it makes her seem more powerful. By tilting up to make her look bigger, and then also the next thing is her facial expression and tone of voice backs this up as well. And then a deep, dark, fast piece of music sets in. This all helps to create for a eerie sense of atmosphere. Okay, so the next clip I then analysed was The Others by Alexandre Amenabar, and this was in 2000. So The Others is a 2001 Spanish-American supernatural gothic horror film with elements of psychological thriller films. It was written and directed and scored by Amenabar himself. So in this clip, I like the way they lead a lot of it with the camera, so it seems like you're actually in the film. When you hear a voice, the camera turns to look at it, just like you would as a viewer yourself if it was in real life. So if I heard a noise to my left, I'm more likely to turn to my left to see what's going on, and that's what really makes you feel like you're actually in the film itself. Again, just like in many of the other films I've mentioned, the way they use the music and sound effects to set an atmosphere is really good. And the low dark sounds make for a more tense viewing, and that's something I may want to use in my film to make it more tense. Okay, so the next film I looked at was from 2010, and it was The Conjuring by James Wan. The Conjuring is a 2013 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wan himself. This is another brilliant example of how sounds can really make you really make a film. Within a few minutes of the natural sounds of the thunderstorms, there is then an unexpected, sharp, loud and quick noise, which is created to aim to make the viewer jump. And then they increase the intensity of the thunderstorm, which makes the film a lot more tense and scary to watch. And then the loud noises stop and you're left with really quiet background noise, which leaves you, the viewer, on the edge of our seats, wondering what's going to happen next. In my film, I'd like to achieve this feeling of making the viewer feel tense, and I could do this by using a variety of different sounds and intensities of them, just like this film did, so I can try to create quite a good atmosphere which will leave the viewer wanting to watch more, but will also leave them quite tense while they're watching it. Finally, the last clip that I watched was from his present day, so 2016, and it was called Don't Breathe, which is actually currently still in the cinemas. The director is Fede Alvarez, and Don't Breathe tends to use more natural films of what's actually happening, but enhances them so they fill the silence a bit more. They include the actor's voice and breathing sounds, which makes the film seem more real. In my film, I'd like to use both sound effects and the natural noises of my actors to create a tense atmosphere for the viewers. Also, I like the way this film is filmed in nearly darkness, and this makes the viewer nearly clueless as what's happening, so they have to try and listen to the sounds to work out what's actually going on in the scene. So by watching and analysing all these film clips from the different eras, it's clear to me that although technology quality and the way films are created are of a much higher specification now from when it was in the older days, it's still clear to me that sound and music play a massive role in the making of a good film. Without the suspense and tension next created with sound effects, a thriller film just wouldn't be engaging to watch, and therefore, when making my film, I need to ensure that the music and the sounds I use fit my storyline perfectly, so the viewers will enjoy seeing my trailer and will be left wanting to view more. Thank you very much for listening.